Contrary to his earlier claim, the Accountant General of the Federation, Ahmed Idris, has said that the £4.2 million Ibori's repatriated fund has not been returned to Delta State. Idris had on Tuesday told federal lawmakers in Abuja that the money returned to the Nigerian government by the UK government had been returned to Delta State, where James Ibori was governor. However, the Delta State government said on Wednesday that it has yet to receive the money. In a later statement, the Office of the Accountant General of the Federation clarified its position, saying the issue of the £4.2 million has not been properly resolved. The AGF's Director of Information, Press and Public Relations, Henshaw Ogubike, in the statement says the money is still being awaited, after which the issues around it will be resolved before further action is taken. And joining us now to discuss this is Nigerian lawyer Evans Ufeli. Good to have you on Newsday.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Now, there seems to be some kind of commotion with regards to the money, where it is and where it isn't. Earlier on, Abubakar Malami, the Attorney General of the Federation, he stated that the funds will be used for ongoing projects. And then we also heard the Accountant General also talk about the Federation, Ahmed Idris, that he said that the money had been paid back to them. But from this recent report, in my introduction to yourself, says basically that he's backtracked a little bit. Why do you think there's so much contradiction? And why do you think he backtracked? And also, why do you think he said that Delta State had received the funds in the first place?
Well, we're very worried about the discordant tone coming from the federal government. The Attorney General of the Federation have consistently said that the fund is going to be applied to the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, Kano-Abuja Expressway, and then the Second Niger Bridge. And we, the League of Ndokwa Professionals, came out to say that that was wrong, that there is no way you can be having such when the funds were actually earned by the Delta State government. If you look at the Constitution in Section 162 and Section 164, it clearly states how that where fund is standing in credit between the state government and the federal government will deploy it to the state. And we were already arguing that. We even went to court to that effect, that this fund belonged to Delta State, must be sent to Delta State. Now, we're happy when the Accountant General of the Federation, before the House of Representatives Committee on Recovered Assets, declared that the money had been returned to Delta State government. And then, after some days, he retracted again. So we are very worried about this discordant tune, because the federal government should understand that this fund belongs to Delta State, because if they use it any other way other than returning it to Delta State, then we'll be forced to believe and think that there's no difference between the federal government and then the convicted former Delta State governor, who actually the funds were traced to him and all that. So we think that the proper thing to do is to return that money to Delta State, because from precedents that we have, even in this country, when the funds of Bayelsa State governor was looted by the former Bayelsa State governor, Dipre Alamesia, the late Dipre Alamesia, it was returned to the state. In Plateau State, the same thing happened. Now in Delta State, we are getting a different thing entirely. And I think that the Attorney General of the Federation is not doing good enough in this matter. His sincerity is called to question, because he understands the law, and he should be able to direct the country in the right direction. His duties are stated under Section 175 of the 1999 Constitution. His office is created by Section 150 of the Constitution. Is to ensure justice, is to ensure that he does the right thing, to make sure that this country is given a good status in the Committee of Nations. But where you have someone coming out to make such kind of statement, you see, the British government is only concerned about that fund be used for the good of the people of Nigeria, and then make sure that it is not diluted and it is applied to, help the citizens of that particular region. That's exactly what the British government is concerned about. But, he went and then signed this agreement, tied it to some projects, and then stating that, yes, it must be applied to those projects. And we say, no, it cannot be applied to those projects, because it is quite clear that the funds the federal government had already divested itself of that funds by the fact that, by law, the state earned it okay? And then part of that fund is from the state IGR. So how would the federal government, and beside that, the project he mentioned are projects already budgeted for in the 2021 budget. So why should you, having budgeted for those projects, why should you not take the funds that do not belong to the federal government to apply to those projects? I mean, this is quite very wrong. And we are saying that this fund should be returned to Delta State. And as for the fear whether the money will be related in Delta State or whatsoever, we, the citizens of Delta State, we, the civil society group, the League of Local Professionals, we are out there to monitor, to ensure that this fund is applied to the right direction so that people in that state will have a sense of belonging. If you go to Delta State, there's a lot of poverty in that state. I mean, despite the wealth we have, despite the huge mineral resources, and then the 13% derivation we get extra from the federal government, we are still suffering from a lot of issues, issue of public health care, lack of public health care facilities, lack of other social amenities, and the rest of it. So this fund is supposed to help the state to augment and then make sure that it gets to the people, and then the people enjoy the dividend of democracy. We are saying that that is what is required of this government, and we stand by that.
All right, interesting perspective. Now, I'd like your legal take on this. Does the Constitution, the Nigerian Constitution now, prevent Delta State from attempting to repatriate these Ibori funds individually from the UK devoid of federal influence? Will the outcome have been different from what we have now?
It does. It does. International relation is on the exclusive list. When you look at the exclusively proper, when you talk about, that's why you have the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, okay? The state, Delta State, is a sub-sovereign. Delta State is not a sovereign, it's a sub-sovereign. The federal government is the sovereign, okay? So where you have such kind of bilateral, where you have such kind of international, even if you look at it where you are trying to get, where an offense is committed and the person is out of the country, the state don't go after that person. You have to submit to Interpol, that's international police, which is run by the federal government. Where you have this international, is the federal government that signed the treaty for recovery and the rest of it with the international organizations and the other countries. So where you have that, it is the federal government that will go after that fund. That is the sovereign, the federal government that will go after that fund and get it repatriated. And once it is repatriated, then the funds can then be directed to the affected persons. If you look at Article 36 of the UN Convention Against Corruption, you'll find out that it is clearly stated. We are signatory to that international law, and it is stated that where you have such kind of a position where funds have been taken away from a particular region or a state of the country, you understand that fund must be traced, and then it must be returned to the victims of that particular region. And that is, if you want to apply that is, and for the agreement that the Attorney General signed with the British government, it's just a piece of paper as far as we're concerned, because if you look at Section 12, subsection 1 of the 1999 Constitution, it says that where there's any agreement, treaty, bilateral or multilateral, okay, between Nigeria and any other country, it must be subjected to the National Assembly for ratification and domestication. So that treaty, that agreement had not been subjected to the National Assembly for domestication and then for the proper, before it can have the breadth of law. So as we speak now, it does not have the breadth of law. And besides, what the British government is after is the right application of that fund to the persons who are affected, and not to tie it to projects already budgeted by budgeted for in the 2021 budget, the 2020 budget and the 2021 budget. You have, funds allocated to those projects already. So if the federal government have to spend the money that belongs to Delta State to any of the said project, then that will be contrary to the laws of this country, because that is not the money that's appropriated for such projects.
Well, Evans, the reports reaching us now basically says that the federal government is borrowing those repatriated funds and that they will be able to pay back at the end of 2022. And it's not just the Ibori fund, any other funds that has been repatriated back into the country or into the coffers, that they're going to be borrowing that. But my question to you is, what do you really think is at play here? Because from one of the things that you said earlier is that the funds for those projects have already been budgeted for. So what do you think is really happening here, based on the recent reports that I've mentioned and based on some of the things that you said earlier regarding the budget?
The federal government cannot stretch forth to borrow the funds that belong to a state without the state's input to it. I mean, the state should give to make an input. I understand that there is a huge need to fund the 2021 budget. And that was why the federal government opted to borrow from the pension fund and then to borrow from all unclaimed funds that are in the banks and the rest of it. That proposal has been made, and that is ongoing. I understand that. But when it comes to a state, a state that is a sub-sovereign, there should be, the Delta State government ought to be carried along in whatever it is. And the state must give its consent to that we run a federalism, okay? And then the state is not supposed to be running at loggerhead with the federal government. The federal government ought to understand, if they are going to borrow this fund, let them come clean so that we can have an agreement, we can reduce it into writing, and then the federal government will state exactly when the money will be paid. That is a different thing entirely. But that is not what is going on here. What is going on here is that the Attorney General of the Federation just made a declaration that, is going to be applied to the following projects. Funds that belong to a state, funds that were looted, funds that is supposed to be used for the development of the good people of Delta State. So, I mean, this is injustice. If we allow this to pass, it will mean that the federal government will have no moral justification whatsoever to go against any criminal in this country, because the federal government would have earned for itself the same status of criminals if it does that. That is the position. So I think we shouldn't, from the grounds of morals and from the grounds of law, we should not allow this to happen. If it happens, we will be in bigger trouble in future, because it will mean that the federal government now have developed capacity to take what does not belong to it. And that is wrong. That is repugnant to natural justice, equity, and good conscience.
All right. On that note, still a fluid situation, and we'll expect more from that. Evans Ufeli, a lawyer, would like to thank you for your thoughts on the recently repatriated Ibori funds from the UK, which has been held by the federal government. It's good to have you.